Okay. No, let me not do that. Let me not do that. Let me not do that. Hi everyone, welcome. We're continuing our series that we started with Psalms of God is. Okay, we're journeying through the book of Psalms to just find out who is God. In the book of Psalms, you really get to know God's personality, what he likes, what he doesn't like, and just who he wants to be to you if you're his child. Without delaying further, we're going to go through Psalms 3 and 4. The book of Psalms 3 is actually it's a bittersweet story because it's about when David was fleeing from Absalom. Absalom. My bad. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name, but just bear with me. It's a bittersweet story because it's about David's son who rose up against him in his kingdom. Now, you can go read the story in 2 Samuel, starting from, say, chapter 13. But what had happened was Absalom was one of David's son. Something had happened to his sister which he was not happy about, and so because of that, he took revenge. And the rules and the laws of that time was that if you take revenge and you take a man's life, you have to be banished. So Absalom ended up running away, and he was banished for quite some time. It's a beautiful story of how a wise lady went and disguised herself and told this parable to David. She asked him, "Why have you kept your son banished for so long? Why don't you make efforts to bring your son back?" And she read this line in 2 Samuel, and she was explaining the parallels between God and the king. And she said, "But God does not take away life. Instead, he devises ways so that a banished person may not remain estranged from him." And that was just beautiful. So because of all of this theater, for lack of a better word, David then went and brought Absalom back. But he didn't bring him back into his courts, but at least he was able to come back to Jerusalem. So you can imagine that after all this reconciliation has taken place, what follows next must have been very devastating and heartbreaking for David. What ended up happening is everybody started loving Absalom, and Absalom became the beloved, and everybody's Absalom, Absalom, Absalom. And then Absalom, his own son, his kinfolk, his flesh and blood, decides that he's going to take the kingdom away from his dad. This conspiracy gets to David, and David has to run for his life because at that time it was clear that the whole city had fallen in love with Absalom, and he's looking at it in a physical sense and realizing that there's no way I'm gonna win against my son, and he runs away for his life. And eventually he writes this story and he goes to God and he cries, and this is when he writes this particular Psalm 3 that I'm gonna get into. And he's crying, he's like, "How many are there, my foes, against me?" And when he's talking about thousands, he's not speaking figuratively. Literally, there were tens and thousands of armies against him because Absalom was going to take over his kingdom. Eventually, David wins, but it's still a bittersweet experience. This is the context of why he ended up writing Psalm 3. And it goes, "Oh Lord, how many are my foes?" This is for those of you who are going through seasons where you just feel like the whole world is against you. "How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. Selah." Sometimes it might not be people, it might just be circumstances, and it might just be the enemy, just like, is God gonna come through? Maybe he's not gonna come through at this time. Sometimes he comes as a quiet voice, but then other times he's just bombarding your mind. I know that I've been through that way. It feels like your mind is literally under siege. And he's not even trying to be subtle about it. It's so obvious that he's trying to discourage you. But here's the thing, is that even though you know it's a lie, sometimes those emotions can just get the better of you, and you're like, what if God doesn't actually come through? And here we can see that David is just going through the most, and he's telling God, hey, this is what people are saying. They're saying that you're not gonna come through for me. But then I love the next part, and it says, "But you are a shield around me, O Lord. You bestow glory on me and lift up my head. To the Lord I cry aloud, and he answers me from his holy hill. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear the tens of thousands drawn up against me on every side. Arise, O Lord, deliver me, O my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw and break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. And so, with that psalm, the takeaway of who God is this. Number one, God is my shield. And while I'm saying it, I want you to just say it with me. God is my shield. And what's a shield? A shield is essentially something that protects. And it's no surprise that that's who he is, because that's the role of a father, to protect. Then the second thing, it says, my glory. And glory also means God's beauty. Everything that we have is in him. In the New Testament, it says that I will send the Holy Spirit and he'll take from me and make it available to you. So right now we have Jesus's glory. We have God's glory, the Father's glory. And I will always remind you that this is even Old Testament. This is without Jesus, but still David had this relationship with God, this encounter that he could say that, God, you're my glory. And he's talking to God as if God is his friend. And when I read this, I'm like, man, I want to get to that place with the Lord, like where I can just say, God, you're my shield. But the more I kept saying it, the more these words became real to me. And now I do believe that God is my shield. And not just that, he is my glory. So say, God is my glory. He's the lifter up of my head. I've had those moments when I've felt so down and out, and the person that you love comes and says, cheer up, lift your head up. And that's who God is. And I don't know what I thought of God, but when I read this, I was like, there's this song that goes, for you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, the lifter up of my head. And I love that song. Like when I feel that everything is just caving in, I just sing that over and over and over again. And just sing that over yourself. He's my shield. He's my glory, the lifter up of my head. And another thing that God is in Psalms 3 in verse 5, it says he's our sustainer. Sustain. So something that holds you up is keeping you. And then the next thing is, he is the smiter of my enemies. I don't know of any good parent who will sit and let his child be beat up. There are some parents where even though they know their kid was in the wrong, they come with full chest and defend that child, but then behind the corners they like smack him over the head and be like, don't do that again. And that's just a human being. How much more God? He's the smiter of your enemies. When I read that, I was like, yeah. God is the smiter of my enemies. Then again, it says, I cry out to the Lord and he answers me. So God answers. He's an answering God. God will answer you. If you feel like you've just been waiting and waiting and waiting, don't stop praying. In Luke, it says, and God spoke this parable to his disciples so that they would always pray and not faint. And it goes to show that the opposite of not praying is not prayerlessness, but it's fainting. But God is saying, don't stop, ask, and you'll receive. Knock, and the door will be open. Seek, and you will find, and he will answer you. And then it says, arise, O Lord, deliver me, O God. That means he's a deliverer. God delivers us. And he says, strike my enemies in the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. Man, David was not holding back on this one. But the fact that he could ask for that meant that he knew that God would do it for him. And so I think that it's really important for us to know this, that God is for us. From God, there's deliverance. Deliverance does not come from anywhere else. God is the one who brings deliverance. Okay, so that's Psalms 3. Let's go over to Psalm 4. It says, answer me when I call to you, O my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress. Be merciful to me and hear my prayer. And if you feel that he's so far away, just keep telling yourself, God answers me when I call. Oh, my righteous God. So God is righteous. This is important because many times throughout scripture, God says, be holy because I am holy. God is righteous, so you have to deal with him in righteousness. He's not going to endorse unrighteousness. And I think this is the mistake that some of us make, is that we think that we can continue living our life and that God is just going to gloss over it. But through Psalms, we can see that God still has enemies. Don't be one of them. Continuing, it says, "Give me relief from my distress. Be merciful to me and hear my prayer." So God gives relief from distress. In Psalms 4 verse 2 is continuing. It says, "How long, O men, will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you love delusion and seek false gods?" So God is the one and only true God. Know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord will hear when I call him. In your anger, do not sin. When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and trust in the Lord. Many are asking, "Who can show us any good?" Let the light of your face shine upon us, O Lord. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound. I will lie down and sleep in peace, for you, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. This is so beautiful. God has a glory, and he doesn't want it to be turned into shame. God sets apart the godly for himself. And if you've given your life to the Lord, you are the godly. So say with me, God has set me apart for himself. The Lord will hear me when I call. God hears me when I call. He then prescribes, "And when you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent." I know most of us are, well, me, I am. So I'm speaking to myself on our phones, just dopamine fix after dopamine fix. But here, if we want a depth with God, before we go to bed, let's just be quiet and search our hearts. Offer right sacrifices. So with God, it means there are right sacrifices that we need to offer, because he is the Lord and he is a king after all. And that's sacrifices of praise, and offer ourselves as a living sacrifice. So David is saying, offer the right sacrifices to the Lord, which means God expects us to offer sacrifices. And then trust in the Lord. You can only trust in something that is trustworthy, which means God is trustworthy. So say it again, say it 10 times. God is trustworthy. Okay, I'm not going to say it 10 times here, but in your bedroom or wherever you are, in your car, whatever you're doing, say it. God is trustworthy. Let the light of your face shine upon us, O Lord. So God's face shines upon me. God's light shines upon me. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when there grain and new wine about. So God fills my heart with greater joy. He doesn't fill your heart with anxiety. What he does is he fills your heart with joy. Greater joy. Better than wine, apparently. Then it says, "I will lie down and sleep in peace. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." God makes us dwell in safety. That's why we can sleep in peace. I heard one time an old papa who was a bit older and had seen life and definitely had a lot of experiences to share, said, "If God can't do it, then it can't be done." And that's just the fact of the matter. If God can't do it, then it can't be done. You can't make yourself dwell in safety. And David knew this so well, and that's why he knew that only God can make you dwell in safety. At the end of the day, you could be in the safest place and something could happen to you. It's God. God is the one that is keeping us. So that is the end of Psalms 3 and 4. We're just going to go over it and you're going to say it after me. God is my shield. God is my glory. God is the lifter up of my head. He is my sustainer, the smiter of my enemies. God is the deliverer. God delivers me. God bestows his glory on me. God answers me from his holy hill. God has set me apart as godly for himself. God hears me when I call. God makes me dwell in safety. God fills my heart with greater joy. God gives me relief from my stress. God is merciful to me. God is the one and only true God. God is trustworthy. God is light and his face shines upon me. And then that's it, you guys. This is who God is. So until next time,